Hi, it's Dacci, and in this tutorial I'll show you how to create sound design with Inferno, the latest cinematic effect library by FlameSound. Inferno is a cinematic sound effects sample library that comes in 3 sizes. Essential contains 120 sounds, Standard comes with 220, and Deluxe comes with more than 450 sounds. And there's a pack with 50 free sounds available from our website. The Deluxe edition includes free updates with new sounds. The first update was already released in late 2021 and more are coming this year. Each sound is available in 4 variations: Original, Space with brighter sound and reverb for epic scenes, Dark with a darker sound and a hint of reverb for subtle atmospheric moments, and Grit with distortion and attitude for aggressive, in-your-face sounds. All sounds come in pristine 24-bit 48 kHz sound quality and are royalty-free, so once you buy them, you can use them in all your projects without any additional costs or licensing issues. To make sure you quickly find what you're looking for, the sounds are categorized and sorted in folders. Now that we have an understanding of the types of sounds contained in Inferno, let's get to our sound design tutorial. To demonstrate some techniques and strategies, I've prepared a trailer from stock footage. As you can see, we have some zooms, passing spaceships, dramatic close-ups on astronauts, but also some empty alien planets. And as of now, there is no sound at all. The first cue is the zoom in on the eye, and for this I selected this short noise sound from the tension category. The second cue after the zoom transition has a lot of things going on. First there's an explosion, then all of these textures come up, and finally a planet is revealed. So there's a lot of things going on and a single sound will likely not cut it. Therefore I will layer a couple of sounds. I'm gonna start with a big boom. I think this is nice because the boom accentuates the explosion and the tail really matches the textures that come up nicely. Booms are bass-heavy impact sounds. They can be useful on their own to accentuate large to huge impacts, but can also be layered with other sound effects to give them more substance and heft. The boom sound covers the low frequencies, but I want to make sure the explosion makes an impact on smaller speakers like smartphones or tablets as well, so I'm adding a second layer with more mid and high frequency content to complement the boom sound. The third layer I'm adding is a musical element, a Braams sound that will make everything sound even more epic. Braams are huge and heavily processed brass or horn-like sounds. They were popularized by Hans Zimmer and the score of the movie Inception and are among the most dramatic, attention-creating sound effects. They also found wide use in music production. The fourth and final layer for this cue is another Braams sound, Screamer, sounds like this. As you can see, I ended up using 4 different sounds for this one cue. Keep this in mind when budgeting projects. A trailer with 10 cues does not equal 10 sounds, but potentially 50 or 100 depending on its complexity. The first sound I'm using on cue number 3 is the Discovery chord sound. I think that works really nice with the dissolving textures and the reveal of the planet. Chords are shorter, harmonic musical elements that can be used to emphasize emotions such as hope or misery. And I'm layering it with this pretty epic sounding Braams sound. This was originally in a different tune, but I changed the tune to match the chord. And then I'm adding a drone sound. On its own, it sounds like this. Turn the volume down quite significantly. I only want this to subtly add to the idea of a planet floating through outer space. Drones are long, evolving sounds that are useful to create gloomy, eerie, or tense atmospheres. One way to think of them is as sound carpets that establish an atmosphere, glue several scenes together, or fill longer sequences with less action. So now we have a cut and we see the surface of the planet. And I selected this sound. It's called Eerie Space. It's an atmosphere sound. And for now, I'm gonna let it reach into the next cue because probably I will blend these with each other. I feel this part is a bit empty. I selected the war drum accent. Let's listen to everything together. Accents are short noises, percussive hits, or musical notes designed to accentuate an action or emphasize that something important is happening. At this point, I have already used quite a few musical sound design elements. Because this trailer is all sound design, I don't have to worry about musical elements matching the score. If there is music, it's a totally different story, and you have to make sure that musical sound design elements match the pitch, scale, and tempo of the score. Let's move on to the next cue. Because we're changing location from the surface of the planet to outer space, I want to emphasize that edit. I want a transition sound because we have an object moving into frame. So I'm going with this deep whoosh transition. It's a really huge spaceship and this doesn't sound large enough yet. So I'm adding a second layer. And I'm adding a third sound that comes in right about when the engines of this ship appear in the frame. Transitions are all about movement, a passing spaceship, a flying bullet, or a logo zooming in. Transitions can also symbolize inner movement, like the surprising reveal of a new fact. They're also used as ramps to quickly build up tension before impacts, or to move to another point in space or time. Finally, I'm adding this atmosphere sound to create even more tension. The beginning of this sound kind of adds to the spaceship moving into frame. Textures are soundscapes that layer many identical acoustic events. Think insect swarm or factory ambience. Let's hear them all together. Next we have this little scene with the astronauts, but right after that we return to the spaceship. Now, I want to do two things. I want to connect this first spaceship part with the second one, but also I want to set this middle part with the astronauts apart. So I'm actually going to edit this sound here and here. So now we have a little gap. Starting off with a little accent. Now I'm adding a drone sound. The next sound I'm adding is a little tension riser. And then I'm adding this atmosphere. It has this piercing sound in it that kind of reminds of an alarm sound, and it adds to the tension of the whole scene. In the next cue we have a spaceship that does a flyby. I'm using a transition sound. The spaceship is actually not moving from the right to the left as much as it's moving towards us and then away from us. But if we do a slight panorama automation, it might help to create the acoustic illusion of something coming closer and then moving away. Let's start on the right and then move slightly to the left. Let's see how that sounds. I'm adding a second layer to accentuate the flyby, and it's an accent called Thriller. Now let's hear it all together. For the next shot, I'm going with the big fat drone sound. I did a quite long fade in and fade out so the two scenes blend together better. To indicate the downwards movement of the spaceship that's about to crash into the planet, I'm using a downshifter. And I'm layering it with this second downshifter that has this cool flutter effect. Downshifters are mostly bass or sub-bass sounds with a falling pitch. Downshifters can be used for a variety of things, such as a drop in tension, a transition, machine or engine shutdowns, or something like a disruptive realization. As we're returning to the ship, I'm using another portion of the stellar overdrive drone that we used in the first shot. This will just add to the idea of a spaceship rattling around, so I'm going to keep it through this whole section. Now, to create some continuity, I'm also continuing the tension riser sound and the tension atmosphere sound that we used in the first segment with the astronauts. I think these three in combination do a great job creating tension. The tension folder contains risers and sweeps to create, well, tension. These sounds are often followed by impacts for the big bang or downshifters to prepare the dramatic turnaround. We really want to create more attention to make clear that things are about to go down. So I added this Braams sound, it's called Achtung. It has the character of an alarm sound, so it goes well with this scene. Next, I'm adding a hit sound from the accent folder. On its own, it sounds like this. In combination with the other sounds, it helps to create this little punch. Helps to make the scene pop out. The next sound I'm adding is this rhythmic sound called chop chop. It adds another layer of movement to accentuate the rattling of the spaceship. Because the scene is meant to build up tension until it leads to the peak of the trailer, a riser is something that would make sense. Around 30 seconds and 3 frames, we have these white lines coming in. They look like plasma or electricity. So the sound I'm adding is a little section of an atmosphere called Alien Hive. It has this buzzing sound that reminds of electricity, so it works well with this image. All the scene did was build up tension to the maximum, and what the viewer expects next is the climax, the peak, the big boom. But that's not happening. All we have is a sun setting on a planet that's floating peacefully through space. So it's more of an anticlimax, and we need to find a way to express that with sound design. The first thing I'm adding is a downshifter. This works well because not only the tension drops, but also we have a downwards movement in the image. Next, I'm adding a little war drum accent sound, which primarily works to separate these two scenes because we have a lot of sounds going on in the scene before, and I don't want it to sound cut off. Also, this drum sound is like case shut. That's it. And I'm layering it with a second accent at synth tone. It adds some atmosphere. I find another downshifter, which I think sounds really cool. And then there's this Braams sound called Fast Cuts, which adds a little rhythmical percussion element, but it also fades out at the end, so it works with the whole going down theme. I'm using the reveal transition for the setting of the sun. We're at the end of the anticlimax, and viewers might be not quite sure what's going to happen next. So I'm going to add to this confusion by placing a little heartbeat sound right after the sun sets. We have a little moment of darkness, and now comes the big surprise turnaround, the grand finale. I'm starting off with this impact sound called Collision Curse, and what's really nice with this sound is it has a little fade in. This is not big enough yet, so I'm adding another Braams sound called Ear Piercer, which should do the trick. The beauty of this part for me is that the Ear Piercer Braam is so huge that I do not actually need to layer tons of sounds upon each other to make this scene sound big. This sound carries most of the weight. And then I add another tension noise short to lead to the scene where it cuts to the eye. And finally, a boom sound at the moment where the eye appears. All my sounds are lined up and ready for mixdown. Let's take a listen. This concludes our Inferno walkthrough and sound design tutorial. I hope you enjoyed the video and got some inspiration and ideas for your next project. To learn more about Inferno, visit our website at flamesound.com. Thanks for watching and see you soon.